What's going on? This is Jimmy.
Hey guys, this is Rachel coming to you with a brand new look.
Guys, thank you all so much for joining us on the Relationship Real Talk Show. We are excited about our first episode in the year of 2020.
2020.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Look, we want you guys to be very, very much so interactive with us. So please share this by all means. Share this live feed with your friends on your page. And we also want you guys to comment. So when we're getting engaged in this conversation, we want to hear your feedback. We're going to talk back to you today. We want this to be an interactive.
We're going to bring you into our living room.
There we go.
As a matter of fact, I already see Shacarolyn. Congratulations on your engagement.
Shacarolyn.
God is good. You've been faithful.
Look,
and he's always faithful.
And we're going to talk offline.
Yes, we'll talk some more, but we're so
happy for you. We're happy for you.
Yes, we are. But yes, we not only want you guys to share this with your friends, your family, your people, but we also want you to rep your city. We know we got some Atlanta people, we got some Huntsville people, I got some Miami people, you got some Louisiana people.
Just wherever you are, we want you to put your city in the feed so we can know what city you are representing.
Yeah,
as
who are we talking to?
Yeah, who we're talking to. I like that. I like that.
Yes. So log on in and join us. Let me tell you something, honey. It really is. How long has it been since we did this?
Ooh,
last.
It's been a while. It's been a while. We took a little hiatus.
It was quite a hiatus.
We wanted to revamp some things.
Recharge,
and write some stuff.
Yeah, so we got some digital stuff that we've been working on that we completed. We got some stuff that we're still working on that will be completed soon. We would see people out in the street and like, what's going on, guys? I haven't seen you. Well, sometimes, you got to put in the time and the grind, and that's what we've been doing. We've just been grinding to get it done. But I just want to ask you something, honey.
Okay.
Do you think that we're on the same page?
I think we're on the same page most of the time. I think that you and I may not always agree on certain things, but for the most part, I would say we're on the same page.
We're on the same page. Yeah. Okay, we live in two different houses. So, can you tell me what percentage, if you had to give it percentage, what percentage of the time you think we are on the same page? What percentage you think we're not on the same page?
I'd say about 80%.
80% what?
On the same page.
And then that means 20 not on the same page?
Right.
We not on the same page. Because I think it's 80% of the time we're not on the same page. 20% of the time, and I enjoy that 20%, that we are on the same page.
So why do you say it's 80% we're not?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Sometimes it's just the little things. You may just see it differently. For example, and some of you may have had this same situation before with temperature. I've already conceded to walking around like a popsicle in my house, in the bed. I'm cold quite often. But if I can just get one space where I can be comfortable, and I can't get it, and that's the car. If he's driving my car, he thinks that at that point he has complete rule over the temperature. So if it's cold outside, if it's 32 degrees or lower, it's freezing.
Right.
Okay?
I agree.
So when we get in the car, we got to let it warm up before we can bring down the heat.
I agree with you too.
And all I know is every time you're driving, I feel like, I'm getting frostbite.
Right.
Because you're ready to turn the heat down.
So you're saying that's an example of us only being 80% on the same page?
No, that's an example of one of the 80% that we're not on the same page.
Gotcha.
I mean, I have loads of them, but that's just one.
So pretty much what you named is called a preference.
That's right.
So would you say, principle-wise though, are we on the same page more often rather than preferences? Because preferences are going to be there.
Right.
And I think for those of you who are listening, that's one of the things we do want to talk about today. Making sure that you understand the difference between, are you going to battle over your preferences or are you going to battle over principles?
Yeah.
See, because principles should be the thing that kind of governs us, and that we can say, hey, we stand firm on these things, right? And I don't think, a couple should be battling over those.
I agree with you.
But the preferences, I could see us kind of,
going back and forth. And here's
But-
the thing, baby. I do believe, to answer your question, I do believe when it comes to principles, our principles are pretty much in line with each other.
Gotcha.
One of those being to love one another.
Gotcha.
And I feel like he should love me enough to let me thaw out first before he turns the heat back down.
Okay, baby.
So your principles can sometimes influence
Right.
your preferences.
Well, notice how I'm trying not to say nothing about you in the heat in the car.
I don't know why, because
When we start sweating, it's time to turn it down.
baby,
son.
you talking about we? You can only speak for Jimmy Rogers.
And who else in the car doing this?
They're fine. I don't ever hear a complaint. Well, with that being said, let me. I'm waiting to see some shout outs from people from different cities.
Yeah, I don't see it yet.
We've got Atlanta, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but we know we got some more viewers out there. So don't forget to go ahead and share with your people and write what city you're watching us from. We would love to see that. All right?
So today we're really going to be talking about, with all jokes aside, we're talking about a house divided. Are we on the same page?
Wow.
When it comes down to it, are we operating with the same core values, the same value system? Are we looking at each other saying, hey, we believe the same thing. We're going to push forward, with the same goal in mind.
Is this ship heading in the same
direction, right? Or are we pulling opposite of each other, right? And so we wanted to make sure that, we gave the little story because, that's really about our preferences, things.
And that story is
prefer.
true.
Right, it is.
Yeah.
It really is. You stay hot and then cold, then hot. We never know what you're going to be feeling.
Oh, wow. I think
So-
that was just a dig on the change of life.
I'm just saying.
But I'm going to act like I didn't hear that. What's going on, LaTroy? So glad you could join us.
That's my man, LaTroy.
Yes, Saint Christina, our love.
Yes,
But yes, we do want to talk about that. We want to talk about core values. And I guess we probably just need to break down the difference between those core beliefs, those principles, and preferences.
Well, I love the way the Bible says it when it comes to this. It says, Mark 3:25, it says, and if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And so I just believe that you and I and every other couple that's trying to have a healthy and thriving marriage should come to some form of a consensus of what your core values are, and both of you all invest in making those core values the centerpiece of your relationship. Because those are the things that when you're not feeling each other, when that person gets on your nerves, it
Yes.
keeps you grounded.
That's
you know
true.
what I'm saying?
It's your measuring stick.
It's also that not only your measuring stick, it is that thing that helps provoke self-control. Because sometimes we get in our feelings. Not to say that it's unwarranted.
Provoked, yes.
Right. Not saying that it's not provoked or whatever. But when you say you love someone, something has to overrule your emotions.
That's right.
And it should be our principles. It should be our core values. And I think that is the thing that we really, really want to talk about
And what
today.
it also helps you do is, and I'm always telling my children this and my students, don't major in the minors.
Right.
There are times that Jimmy and I may get into it, and literally it starts to feel like a small snowball, and it is getting bigger and bigger. And then something in my mind will be like, hold up. This is not even worth us using this kind of energy off of. It's not something that's about to break us at our core.
Right.
Now, does that mean that, there might take some giving and taking when it comes to preferences? Yes. But I do feel as if we have to pick our battles
Exactly.
as it relates to the differences that we might have.
Right. I think if we save our energy to aim toward our principal goals, the less you'll fight over some preferences. Because if it's a preference, really a preference is a strong liking.
Right.
Just because I like it strongly don't mean that it's right.
That's right.
Doesn't mean that it needs to happen. Because remember, we believe in this wholeheartedly, family, that your decisions should be based on what's best for the marriage, not just what's best for you. Because if you only operating in what's best for you, the marriage is going to suffer. And so this is why it is so important to understand what your core values are. Do those core values promote the unity that one would want in their relationship, or is it promoting some self motivating factor?
Right. And you just said something so deep that made me think about, we always think about when people get married, the two become one.
Mm-hmm.
We always associate that with the flesh, physical part of it. But literally, you're also becoming one in your vision,
Mm-hmm.
one in your focus,
Right.
one in your movement as far as the direction that your relationship is going.
Exactly.
And you know, I'm sure many of us have been in relationships before where one person's going one direction, one person is going the other direction. And based on the law of physics, if you're putting the same amount of energy going in opposite directions, where are you going? Nowhere.
Right.
And so I think that piece is so key, but many times it's overlooked because we get caught up in the stuff of life, and it just kind of muddies those waters.
Yeah, I often challenge people, don't let life control you. You were given dominion over your life. So we're supposed to control life, not the other way around.
Right. That's right.
And so I'm just at this point at the tender age of 50 where I no longer accept excuses. No, you have control, because Jonathan McReynolds says it best in a song. I make time for what I treasure.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's true. I choose my priorities.
That's
you know what
right.
I'm saying?
That's
And
right.
that's how we are in life. But it seems
That's
like
right.
in our marriages, and even with working with couples, I find that the couples that struggle the most are the ones who are not focused on what's going to be best for the relationship. It's normally people that are focused on what's best for me.
For me, right.
You know,
Self gets in it.
right. And
And
so-
you just said
and it
something,
hurts.
baby.
It
You
hurts.
said, this is just sidebar, you said the tender age of 50.
Yes.
I've just never heard the word tender and the age of 50.
Girl, I'm still young at heart.
Said in the same sentence. How you doing, G daughter? I see you.
Oh,
I
Dion
see
is
you.
on.
Dion, so glad you can join us. Go on and tell the people what city you
Dion, please,
repping.
everybody, if you can see Soleil Carroll, that is our daughter. She's out of the great state of, and we're gonna let her post that because we're not gonna say it until she posts it.
Yeah, we want her to rep that. We want her to-
Yeah. I am. I'm just elated. It is the tender age of 50. Listen, here's how I see it. If Abraham and Sarah had a baby when they was up in their 90s and 100 years old, I'm young.
Did y'all see what he just referenced? He just went back to Abraham.
I'm
We don't
young.
even live that long anymore, people.
Guess we
Back
did.
back then we lived, a really long time. Now what? Life expectancy of the male is what, 70 something and 80 something for the woman. I think women live longer than men.
Yeah, because y'all worry us to death.
But we digress, baby. We digress. But I want to ask you guys something. What's happening, LaTroy? Yeah, I want to ask y'all something. What are some things you think should be a part of the value system? Like when you're thinking about, for those of you who are not married, the relationship that you'd like to have for the rest of your life with someone, what are some of those core beliefs? What does that look like to you? That without that, you can't have a relationship. You can't see yourself with that person for the rest of your life. Because we do have a scripture that has to do with that. And many times we think of it in a different perspective. But let me read it to you. 2 Corinthians 6:14 says, "Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness?" And many times when we hear that, and my husband and I have talked about this so many times, we think that it solely has to do with religion. Like, you're in this religion, I'm in this religion, so this is not going to work. Not to say that a religion is not applied here or cannot be applied here.
But it's not the only application that is referring
that
to.
scripture is referring to, and
Yeah.
it's not the only way you can be unequally
Equally yoked.
yoked.
Right. You can be unequally yoked financially. You can be unequally yoked emotionally. You can be unequally yoked physically. You can be unequally yoked socially.
Right.
There are so many different ways that we can be unequally
Right.
yoked to the point where it will cause stress in the relationship.
Right.
And in the real world, see, spiritually we call it unequally yoked, but in the counseling community we call it, are you compatible?
Are you compatible?
Are you all compatible? Do you all mesh in the areas that really matter the most? You know, and a lot of times people don't actually mesh, and they're not compatible.
Yes.
But there were one or two things that they saw or that they wanted in a person, and they said, forget the other three or the other four, and they dove into a relationship, and then later on they found out, oh my goodness, who are you? You're not who I thought you were, and so it's a thing that we, and I think as Christians, I watch Christians all the time, you know, make the decision to be unequally yoked,
Right.
and then when it doesn't work out,
Right.
they're questioning God. It's like, okay, you knew that individual didn't
And
have the same belief system, but also I challenged him. I'm like, not only did you know, obviously you wasn't grounded in your belief system,
right. And
because it was that easy for you to step outside of it because of some emotion or some hope or some false, you know, imaginary in outcome, until you dove into something that you should have never taken. It's like playing Russian roulette with your life.
Right.
You know,
and I'm not going to sit here and act like it's easy. Like sometimes people think just because you're married, you don't understand maybe how a single person might feel. You know, I was not always married.
Right,
I was
that's unfair.
single.
Right.
But I'm not going to downplay that overwhelming feeling that you can get when you feel like you've been faithful. You've done what God wants you to do. You've saved yourself, or whatever the case may be, and then it just seems like God, are you going to send someone to me?
Right.
Am I going to be with someone? And that's why this is to piggyback on something that you said about, you know, getting to the point where like he got this, so I could ignore these other things. And so what happens is, and the enemy helps us with this, we fool ourselves into thinking that accepting that is going to be enough to carry the relationship.
Right.
But the analogy I like to think of is, like, think about the fact that you're like building a house. I remember when I built a house in Huntsville or in Harvest, and they had to clear the land and level it out and put up the 2x4s and things of that nature to prepare to lay down the foundation. They did not lay down the foundation if it was raining. Like they had to check the forecast. There were times I was frustrated because I had a timeline. And so during the time that foundation is laid, like, you want that thing to dry. You want it to dry evenly. You want it to dry perfectly. You don't want any cracks in the foundation, because that is solid. That's what's going to hold up the whole house. You can't sacrifice that foundation. You can't say, well, I think we'll do without a foundation. We'll just have sand or we'll just have dirt or what have you.
Or we'll use asphalt.
We'll use asphalt. But here's the thing. Once the foundation is down and the 2x4s go up and the walls and all these other things and the brick, what have you, now it's time to decorate the home. You have so many options. If the other person wants blue curtains or you want green curtains, you can change that out. Those are your preferences.
Right.
But that very foundation on which you stand, if something is wrong with that and you're in a relationship, you'll continue to run around the mulberry bush, because at the core of it, something is cracked. And the only way it's going to be fixed is if you just tear it all up.
It's all got to be torn down. It all
to be built back up.
Right. It has to all be torn down. The foundation has to be demolished and reformed and repoured, hardened again to finalize what our core value systems are. And I think a lot of times we struggle. And now you mentioned something. You said if you're not married, even if you are married and you recognize now, that
definitely.
we may not be on the same page.
Definitely.
The question is out there is, what are some things that you've now discovered, even if you've been married for a while, that your marriage could not survive or thrive without having it intertwined within the foundation of your marriage. You know, and I think a lot of people will say the standard answers. Well, that's prayer, that's trust, you know, and you know, but day to day, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
What is required of you to give that marriage the chance to thrive?
That's right.
You know, and I think sometimes we work so hard not to look in the mirror. We try to make everything a team sport. Well, the only reason team sports work is because the individuals on the team do their part.
Is doing their job.
Right. And so now
the goal
team, right,
is the same.
right, the goal is the same,
Right.
but each player has a responsibility
That's
for the
right.
goal to be met.
That's right.
And I think sometimes we neglect our responsibility on the team, and then we don't get the end result that we wanted, and now we're mad. Like, well, you know, you did fumble like 4 times, like
Right,
at the
right.
2-yard line.
That's right.
I mean, we can't win if we can't score. You know,
And-
so
and
we
that-
have to be honest with ourselves and be
Right.
able to look in the mirror and say, why do I keep doing this?
And part of that is going back to your core values. If you
Yes.
have some in place, and let me just interject this here: if you're in a relationship and you guys have not determined what your core values are, don't get me wrong, it's going to be a struggle because you're already in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But you can still establish what your core values are when you sit down and have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing: you can continue as individuals in 2020. Here's what I'm realizing more and more: it's harder and harder for those of us that want to stay on the right path and do the right thing.
Right.
And let me just interject this here because we forgot to mention it, but we do Christian counseling, and it's all about Christian beliefs based on the Bible, right? So of course our core values are based on the Word of God.
Exactly.
If you're not a Christian, whatever your values are, they have to be in alignment with one another. And many times, you know, whether it be from social media, that platform, or people, slowly but surely it's getting easier and easier to go away from your core values and beliefs, all in the name of, well, that's them. You could do what you want to do. Do what feels right.
Yeah, what makes you feel good.
Do what makes you feel good. And I have to be honest, based on what I've read in the Word, I mean, as sinful beings, we are bent towards doing the wrong thing.
Exactly.
And just like with anything, there is not an organization, and if there is, they won't last long. There is not an organization that does not have a set of core values. I would say Chick-fil-A comes to mind. Just about everybody eats Chick-fil-A or has eaten it at some point. You know, here in Atlanta, I had an opportunity to go to the site and the headquarters. And what was clear as you went from room to room, place to place, the theme and the focus was very clear. It was a very God-centered type of atmosphere, but it was clear that everybody understood the beliefs and the core values. And they are successful as a result.
Right. Because
it's my pleasure.
No matter where you go, your Chick-fil-A experience is relatively the same. It's like, wow. I don't care what neighborhood you go to, if there's a Chick-fil-A, you can almost depend on that service being good.
You
know
might
what I mean?
get one. I remember one time they wouldn't take a card. They said it had expired. Okay, maybe it had. But generally, even if it expires, they take it because they just believe on the satisfaction of the customer.
I want to look at we have LaQuisha Gaffney. She
How you
said
doing, LaQuisha?
She answered the question of what are one of the things that, you know, a relationship needs for it to thrive, and she says understanding from each other. LaQuisha, I think that is so very, very important. Understanding. And here is the caveat to that. A lot of us want to be understood so badly until we're not trying to understand.
Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Right. So you know, we're fighting so hard for the other person to understand us until they looking at us like, so you're just not concerned with anything I'm saying right now. You know, and we have to be very careful with that. That is a powerful one.
That's a
Ms.
powerful
Gaffney.
one. And you have to be willing. Here's the thing. I think we've all felt like we weren't understood, but we also must understand what understanding looks like.
Right.
Understanding is not always, I'm going to agree with you.
Yes.
Once you have stated your case or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that sense of, and that's why I always say consideration, that you're given to that person, that whatever it is at that time that they're trying to get you to understand, whether they're articulating it or not, they have to feel like you have given them the respect enough to hear them out.
Right.
And understand where they're coming from without necessarily agreeing. Sometimes you may not. But if you're just, and Lord knows we've been guilty of this. You know, he feels like there are times he's talking and I'm just waiting to say something when he's done. Probably so. And there are times that I'm talking and he's waiting to interject. But that really goes back full circle to what we're saying. See, Jimmy and I, with what we do, we never want to come across like we got it down packed and we're perfect. Because, you know, if I've said before, he certainly is not perfect. Pause. Moment of silence. And I'm not perfect. And so, with that being said, there's a constant refining that's going on because you're going back to the Word of God.
Right.
And so, when I think about that, or when you're in a company, like even me as an educator, we're constantly going back for professional development.
Right.
The best educators believe in professional development and are always trying to refine their craft and what they're doing. And I think the mistake that people make sometimes is they take each other for granted. They take the marriage for granted.
Complacency.
They become very complacent and don't realize that there's a refining. And even those core beliefs. Maybe what you thought was your core beliefs, maybe you need to rewrite those. Maybe you need to add some things. Maybe you need to tweak some things to them.
Because we have to account for growth.
Because you got to account for growth.
Right, we have to account for growth.
Here's what I do know. You cannot ignore it because it will either come back in a positive way or it will come back like that pimple that you just can't get rid of.
And 9 times out of 10, it normally comes back negatively.
It comes back negatively.
And unfortunately, we allow ourselves to be lured into this trap of the enemy of just becoming very confrontational. Again, that's why even I think in order to be successful at these things that understanding and love and caring and all that stuff, there has to be some self-analysis. We have to look at ourselves, look inwardly to say, what am I bringing to the table that's positive? And what am I actually, is it possible that I'm bringing something to the table that's hurting the relationship? If you cannot ask yourself that question, you are probably the main problem.
And here's the other thing. If you've had that same problem from relationship to relationship,
you are the problem.
The one consistent thing
is you.
Yes. And so that value system, whatever it is, and I mean, we hadn't even talked about children, but like, when you throw children in the mix, it gives it a whole new dynamic.
You throw family.
Because when it's just, here's what I've learned. You think everything is okay, but I always, don't get me wrong, I'm all about marriages and relationships and seeing relationships grow. But to me, a true test, after they've gone through the honeymoon phase and they gotten on each other's nerves and stuff, how are you now going to behave if you choose to have children? Because that's where self-sacrifice has to start happening. And that's where those core beliefs are critical, because when it's just you and that person, you could be like, well, this is what I'm going to do. And, I'm in charge of myself and this is what I'm going to do. And you could be the same way. But those children belong to both of you. Well, so now what are you going to do?
I'll say this. I think the self-sacrifice should have started when it was just you two.
Definitely.
All the children do is expose it even more so.
Yeah, both of those exacerbated.
Yeah, because you cannot be married and be selfish.
Right.
It's not going to work. And bringing a kid into a relationship where you're already exhibiting very selfish behaviors, it's only going to stress the relationship 10 times
definitely.
more. Because one person is going to feel like all the burden is on them, and you're not carrying your weight. You're not being a good team player. You know what I mean? And so those things are very, very important in developing and understanding what your core values are. But so what about decision making? How does decision making play
into being on the same page?
Yeah, being on the same page
and not being divided.
Right. How does that
I mean, because if your core values pretty much are set in place and you both agree with them,
and you're living by them,
them to the best of your ability, all it does is allow you to become more in alignment to where when it is time to make decisions that's best for the relationship, you have something that you both stand on and can refer to. And I think what's important is when you are making decisions, for those of you who are Christians, it should be you should be having devotional time where you actually are consulting God. Because just because you have your core values, sometimes the way that plays out in day-to-day life, you might still need some direction. I mean, you are going to need direction.
Well, Paul clearly says that we need to die daily.
That's right.
You know, so in other words, every day that I wake up, I need to renew whatever it is I thought I had yesterday so I can build on today. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes we think we can go to church that once a week and be good for 6 days. You know, and that's really not how it's going to work.
And that's if you think the church is a building. Now I'm
true.
I hear what you're saying, but we are the church.
Right. So if you're not constantly in communion with God and constantly saying, God, listen, show me me. Show me my weaknesses. So I can have the wisdom to allow you to give me strength in those areas, right? And I think that makes the decision making in the relationship a lot easier. Right. So now we have the principles, our core values are the same. We have that individual self-discipline to get what we need from God individually. Now when we come together to worship, it should be a much more glorious event. Right. But and let me caution those of you who are watching against this other thing. It is called habits. Okay? Let me caution us against habits. Just because you wake up every day and you pray and you read a couple of scriptures and then you pray again and then you go on with life, it does not mean that your relationship with God is strong or solid. It just means that you have a habit. And let me explain how you know. If your life has not changed since you've been praying every morning and during your worship and all of those things, maybe you're just doing it out of habit rather than a relationship. See,
wait, baby, hold up, pump the brakes. And when we get a chance, we got a lot of comments on here I want to respond to.
And for those of you who are commenting, Facebook is really showing these things a little bit late on our end. So I was just scrolling up and I didn't see anything. But all of a sudden I see all of these things.
I said, the people are not commenting.
Right.
My bad. We're going to get to y'all in just a minute. But you just said something that I think is one of those, like, you know how you eat a good piece of steak? You got to let that thing stay in your mouth for a minute and let it marinate. Say that one more again.
Well, I think I said here, you know, sometimes if your life isn't showing if it's not playing out in your life about the prayers and maybe you're more worried about the habit than the relationship. We should be trying to develop a relationship with God, because once I have a relationship with God, I can now foster a relationship with you. I'm serious. It is. We like to make this complicated.
That's right.
And it's really not complicated. It is really simple.
It's only complicated because we let us get in the way.
Exactly. And we try to manipulate how God is going to do what God's going to do.
Right.
Right, you know.
But I want to say something, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. It's, LaQuisha Gaffney asks, do you believe that children are supposed to come first before your spouse?
No.
And we've talked about this before. It's God first, then your spouse, then the children. Now, what I just gave to you is the way it should be. Does it always end up that way? No, doesn't mean it makes it right. But here's what I've learned. We're not saying that just because your spouse comes first that you neglect the children.
Right.
So it's not a thing of the baby needs to eat but my husband needs quality time.
Right.
So I'm going to spend time with him while the baby's crying.
No.
We're not saying that. But what I have truly learned, and I can say this because, you know, I came from a home where my parents divorced at 11. And from 7 to 11, they weren't even in the same home because we moved from New York to Miami. So in my younger years, I really didn't see what it looked like. I saw what a spirituality looks like because my mother was a very spiritual woman, but I just didn't see where that fell. She did get remarried, but still, I was much older by that point. But here's what I have learned: if we just simply do what God asks us to do, although it might feel uncomfortable, I'm talking to the women, because we're the ones that with our babies and our children, we want to come to the rescue, and we want to feel as if, no, I got my child needs this first, and then the spouse. By design, it's God first, then your spouse, then the children. I promise you, if you put it in that order, the rest will iron itself out and actually work itself out. But anytime you try to do the reverse and put the children in front of the spouse, it brings contention. And I do think that that's a conversation that couples have to have way before they have children. Because
and be honest about it.
And be very honest about it, because and even before you get married.
Right.
But that kind of segues into the next question. Go ahead.
Christopher has a question.
That's the one I was talking about.
How do you show your wife love? And Rachel, how do you show your husband love? So let me just challenge you all out there. For those of you who may be wondering the same thing, there is a test. You can go to Google up the 5 love language quiz, right? And each one of you all take that quiz. And answer it as honestly as possible.
Honest.
Be very honest about your answers, right? Because what that quiz is going to reveal is there are 5 different love languages, and it's going to tell you which love language is more valuable to you, right? It's gonna give you number systems, right? So the 5 love languages are quality time, words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, and gifts, right? So those are the 5 languages that we as human beings speak, right? So your spouse likes some of those things and some more than others. Like for instance, my top 2, which both rated 10, was quality time and physical touch. Then the next lowest thing was 9, which was words of affirmation. So if Rachel really wants to speak my language and show me love, it is through quality time and physical touch. If she really wants to, show me love. Now, her top 2 was words of affirmation and acts of service.
Flip the other one. The acts of service is the first one.
Acts of service, then
and
words of affirmation. So if I want to show her love, I have to speak those languages to her.
And can I piggyback here? I know you were. Here's what's so deep about what he just said. He has to speak that language, but just like actual languages, if you've never spoken French or Spanish before, you have to learn. So he has to ask me, what does that look like for you?
Yes.
What does acts of service look like for you? What does words of affirmation look like for you? Because from the surface, and I've told him this before, from the surface, words of affirmation, you think it would mean, baby, you look so nice today. I love the way you, and I have to say this about my husband. He always tells me how nice I look. He always tells me he loves me. He's always giving me words of affirmation. But what I realize for me is I'm a word person, and words of affirmation also come into, if we're discussing something and we're not agreeing, it's the way he responds to something that I say. To not affirm what I'm saying, or the lack of consideration that I might feel on my end based on something that I might be talking to him about. So love languages have been talked about for years, but in 2020, you have got to realize, to save your relationships, you can't take the approach of, well, I ain't doing his till he do mine. I'm not doing hers till she does mine. And this is what I want to do. And this is what I feel comfortable doing. Or this is just how I am. That comment right there is one of the worst comments you can say as a matter of fact, it's a fixed mindset.
Right.
There's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. The fixed mindset says, this is how I am. The growth mindset is, baby, what do you need from me?
Right.
I know this is your love language, but what do you need from me? And I'm not even going to sit up here and lie and tell y'all that it's easy for me to always speak his language. That is a challenge for me. Not because I don't love him, but because that's just not a language that I am fluent in.
Right.
And so I'm learning to speak it more. Not that I don't even enjoy spending time with him or, the physical touch. Because I love that he can touch me and I touch him in so many different ways. But it's just something, it is his life juice. It's like, if he gets that, it fuels him. And if I get that, that's what fuels me.
And I think that is the most important thing. Sometimes, a friend of ours, another relationship expert, his name is Quest. Quest say, you must be what you desiring from your spouse.
Have mercy.
And I think that was a very, very profound statement. We have another comment from Dion. She says, yes, habits, you are supposed to grow and you're just forming habits.
So she must have been responding to something you said about your habits.
We're talking about, because we were talking about sometimes, what we do can become habit forming and not really changing our lives. It's just something we do. It's just a ritual.
And somebody once told me, life begins outside of your comfort zone. And I find that habits make us comfortable because habits make us feel like everything is normal. This is what it's supposed to feel like. And it's so interesting how much you can evolve and grow over time, because I've always looked at things like, okay, I've reached this point. Great, I'm here. No, it's not even like that. It literally is there's nothing wrong with setting goals, but those goals are eternal.
Right.
Because we are flawed beings.
Yes, we're constantly growing.
And oh my gosh, thank you, Holy Ghost. And literally, we're just here to glorify God. And if we're fighting him, for him to change us, as a couple, how are we going to glorify God?
Even how are we going to survive?
How are we
we're fighting the Creator.
Right. And how are we going to survive?
Our spouse doesn't have a chance.
Right. And then at the end of the day, people, here's what Jimmy and I, the more we talk to couples, the more we do what we do, the more we realize the majority of couples, we're not talking about the ones that just got married and you're still in la la land. I completely respect you and respect your journey. And some of you who just got married, you may have put in the work before, so it's not as hard. But the majority of marriages, a lot of times, are surviving. They're not thriving.
Exactly.
And I don't know about you guys. If I'm going to be married, I might as well have stayed single if I'm going to be miserable.
Right. Or just surviving.
Oh, right, that's what I'm saying. And when you're surviving, you just feel so miserable. And my thing is, it's not like I wake up every day looking at my husband saying, whew, every day everything is just great and just perfect. No, sometimes I don't like him. I just don't like who you are right now. I don't like who you're being.
Right. And that's real.
And that's real.
That's why we call it relationship.
Real talk. And because people see us from the outside looking in, they're like, you guys look like y'all been married for forever. I mean, between the two of us, we've had marriages that equal up to a long time.
Right.
But we've had to learn some tough lessons from that. But we do, at the end of the day, I do enjoy him. I enjoy his company. And at the core, I know he's a good person. I would not, and when I say good, people always say, what does that look like? But good as in, he has a heart for Christ. He has a heart for people. And that's what I need in my life. Now, does it always manifest itself on a day-to-day basis?
No, because sometimes you can get on my nerves, and not just you, but
baby,
people
it's okay.
in general.
You're being transparent.
No,
here.
but I'm saying people in general, and we all have those moments where we have to really rely on Christ. Did you see Marcel? Oliver.
Yes, what's up,
Oliver said,
Oliver?
he answered
Denali.
the question. He said, God, spouse, kids, respect the
you got to respect the hierarchy.
Yes.
And I'm going to shout out Quest again. He did one Facebook Live where he was talking about order of operations.
Yes.
And the teacher in me
Yeah.
just appreciated that. PEMDAS, you got to do parentheses before you do exponents. Matter of fact, if you don't follow the order of operations, you end up with the wrong answer.
That's right.
And
so many of us are ending up with the wrong answer.
we're ending up with the wrong
and
answer.
mad because it's wrong.
And mad because it's wrong. And keep knocking our heads up against the wall to do the same thing over and over and
Is
expect different
insanity.
results is the definition of insanity.
Yep.
So some of you are in that crazy cycle and you don't know how to get off. And you're just trying to survive. You know how you get off that crazy cycle? Somebody has to decide, I'm gonna do what's right, regardless of what he or she does.
Oh, wow.
Because that is what God expects of me. That's why your relationship has to be rooted and grounded in Christ and not your spouse. Your relationship has to be rooted and grounded in
I
Christ.
know they're like, who's she looking at?
Y'all, we got screens everywhere. Your relationship has got to be rooted and grounded in Christ and not your spouse.
Shawanda Johnson, she said that's very deep. She says just surviving and not thriving. Shawanda, and I'll just say this, you know, I firmly believe that God put us on this earth not only to serve him and give him praise and honor, but he also put us on this earth so we could be living examples to other people so they could want to serve him.
That's right.
What better example could we give the world of how glorious marriage could be?
That's right.
If we have a marriage that's thriving.
That's right.
I wouldn't want to be married if I saw half of the marriages I see now if I was single. I'm like, oh no, I'm not going through that. You know what I mean?
And here's what, it goes back to something we've talked about before. It's all about the perception of what people have thought that marriage is supposed to be. Because I'll never forget my oldest daughter. She's 24. And we talk about this a lot, whether it be at the kitchen table, in the car, what have you. And she was so devastated by when I said marriage is work. She's like, gosh, Mom, why you make it sound like that? Because it is.
Right.
Because it is work. Not so much that it's not work that's worth giving. But I want to change the perception, because the perception out there, and for years have been, you know, Leave It to Beaver, and the wife comes home and she has her neatly pressed dress and dinner is ready and everything just seems like everything just goes perfect. And we live happily ever after with 2 kids, a dog, and a white picket fence. And I'm sure some people are trying to live that life, and we're not saying that it's not possible to have those things. But the real work is not in the things. The real work is in the character building that takes place within the relationship. I've said it before and I will say it again. Marriage, that's the difference between not being married and just like whether it be shacking up, not judging anybody, but and being married as a covenant. It is salvific.
Yes.
And what that means is it can truly determine our journey towards the kingdom or lack thereof. And so he is here. As much as sometimes I cannot stand certain things that he might say to me, or I don't like the way he said it, it is my responsibility to go back and reflect on my core beliefs, our core beliefs, and say, you know what? That's true. I got to eat that, or I got to go back and apologize, or I have to receive that and be willing to make the changes. And that's the thing.
I want you to look at that camera.
No, see, now you playing.
No, seriously.
How you playing?
I
now
want you to
playing.
look in that camera.
Y'all
and
already
just
playing. We almost
say that
made it
one more
through.
time.
No,
I want you to look in that camera and say, sometimes I have to go and
sometimes my husband needs to go and reflect on what it is that I said so that he can work out, beloved,
look,
whatever is within him that needs to be released. But wait, somebody said something so deep. LaQuisha Gaffney said, how do you guide your husband into being the head of the household? Let me tell you something.
Oh, wow.
I appreciate that question, and it's heavy. It's heavy because the thing is, one of the questions I have is, was he that way when you met him? Like, did he have the qualities of a man that would be the head of the household? Did you know or not know when you got married that he had those qualities? Or was it a situation where maybe it started that way You got married, everything was great, but now all of a sudden, or it seems as if it's all of a sudden, he's no longer taking on that role.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my response to you. And when I think about the word, as a woman, the worst thing you could do is make him feel worse for whatever it is that could be going on within him. The worst thing you can say is, "You a sorry man. Like, why aren't you the head of the household? You're the one that's supposed to be doing this. You're the one that's supposed to be doing that." The only thing that you could do is continue to, number one, of course, pray. Have your relationship with God so he can reveal some things to you as to how to treat him, how to talk to him. Mm-hmm. Because it could be something that took place, whether it be, childhood, adulthood, what have you.
Or it could have been within your relationship.
Or within your relationship.
Sometimes we try to blame it on other stuff.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's us.
Yes, I'm giving the full gamut.
Right.
But whatever it is, ask the Lord to reveal it to you so that healing can take place. Because I don't think most men want to feel like they're not the head of the household. And some people are so afraid of that terminology. And I'll go ahead and insert this here because we talked about this before, where as women, we're all about like that women empowerment. And I'm all about women empowerment, men empowerment. I'm all about that. But my empowerment and his empowerment should not cancel each other out.
Right.
Our empowerment should only strengthen our movement forward. And so when men get to the point where they don't feel like, or they're not behaving like the head of the household, there's a void. There's something going on within that needs to come out, or that needs to be exposed, or that needs to be addressed. Would you not say?
I'm gonna answer your question this way, LaQuisha. You said, how do you guide your husband into being the head of the household? And I love the term you use, guide. Scripture says that if a woman is married to a man that does not believe in God or serve God, her serving God could be an example to him for him to be won over. So my first response to how you could guide your husband into being the head of the household would be, you first live a life that would promote him to want to lead. Ladies, let me just say this. I have been doing counseling working with couples for almost 15 years. Here's something that I found very consistent. A lot of women are more bossy than they want to admit.
He used that word, bossy.
Right. Than you want to admit, right?
Word.
So that means that sometimes you have to step back to allow him to lead, right? Then
that's good.
Here's a second thing that you may be dealing with.
That's good stuff right there.
You may be dealing with a man who's never had the responsibility of leading, and he's too prideful or too fearful to say to you, super strong woman, that I don't know what I'm doing, without feeling like he's going to be judged or condemned.
Or talked about.
Right, or condemned. So sometimes it's best to have those questions. Like if you want your man to pray for you and he's not doing it willingly, you could ask a simple question. Babe, do you think you could pray for me before I go out today? I really feel better when I feel like I've been covered by my husband. See, that's non-threatening.
Yes.
You said it in a way where he wants to feel like he's protecting you now, right? So it's all about how we are addressing certain things when we're talking about guiding. I would say always do whatever form of guiding you're trying to do, make sure that it's done in love and not manipulation.
Or fear even.
Right. Exactly, but especially not in manipulation.
Definitely.
So do it in a manner where he's seeing your need for that, and when he starts to do it, when he starts to being the head of the household, please follow. See, because once we start leading and you pulling away from the leadership, don't make the mistake and say what I hear a lot of women say, oh, he ain't strong enough to handle me. No, you're just foolish. Don't no man want to be fighting with his wife all the time when he's trying to lead. So we have to be really mindful of what we're doing, how we're set. Even men, when we're talking about leading, that don't mean you're a dictator.
Wait.
You have
Say
to
that one
lead.
more time in the camera for the people.
It doesn't mean that we're being a dictator just because we're leading. We're leading.
I think that's man's way of leading.
Well, no.
Meaning, like in men's, when I say man, like human, like
Okay.
we think of leading or like the man is the head, like he's a dictator. He's telling you when to walk, which way to go.
Yeah,
and
it's not. No,
it's not even like
no,
that.
it's not that. It's not that at all. We're supposed to lead.
It's a
We're supposed to
spiritual
lead
leadership.
in love, just like we're following Christ in love. Christ is leading us in love, like we're following Him, and all of that is supposed to be a mirror reflection of what's
That's
going
right.
on
She
in
said-
the context.
LaQuisha said, sometimes as a strong, all caps woman, you don't want to be strong and go getting. And let me just say something about strength. It's like
Oh wow.
sometimes the strength could be a quiet strength. It doesn't always manifest itself or look the way we think strong would look. Because I get it. You know, I've been a single parent before. And that whole superwoman, and that's a whole nother video. I might have to do that one by myself. Shedding that superwoman status. I don't have a cape. I got rid of that cape and burned her a long time ago.
Did it work
Because
for real?
the cape?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I did some things. I made some things happen with the help of God. But what it did do to me was give me unneeded anxiety and stress because of the expectation that I set for myself was unrealistic.
There we go.
And then what it also did was it put me in a position, like I did what I had to do at the time that I had to do it as a single mom. But what it did for me also is by the time I got married, I didn't initially understand how to let go of a lot of those things that I was doing because I was so used to doing it. So God has sent me this priest to help me and to help balance that thing out, and I still call myself being strong and handling this and handling that because that was my default.
Right.
It wasn't like I was purposely trying to tell him, no, I'm going to do this because I'm strong. I don't feel like I had to announce it. I just felt like I had to do what I had to do. But women, I'm just telling you, the quiet strength comes from within. The quiet strength is when you fuel yourself. You fuel yourself by taking care of yourself mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. Am I still lacking in some of those areas? Yes. Physically, I could do way more to keep myself together. But I think when we put those parts in it, and you have that spiritual connection, God will give you the words to say to your significant other, to uplift them, to give him the space and the room to be able to lead out and be that person. And that whole make room, it has so many implications of making room.
So many good compliments. I want to go back to LaQuisha. LaQuisha said sometimes as a strong woman you don't want to be strong and go getting, right?
She said, I don't want the cape at all. Coming from a previous marriage, I know how to be submissive and be his helper.
Right.
But if I step back, I have a fear everything to come up before my eyes. I'm giving you a high five on the I don't want a cape at all, but I know you want to say something.
LaQuisha, let me just say this, and I'm gonna answer both of these questions. I understand you. Even as men, we don't always want to be the strong one all the time. All the time we're not always strong. That is a lie that society has placed on the burden of men, which is why most men are dying early. Because there are some unrealistic expectations on our shoulders as well too.
Have
right?
mercy.
Those of us who are men who are really striving to protect, provide, and be the priest of our home, we want a woman equally strong. See, the deal is if both of us are strong, when I am weak, she can pick up the slack. But let me go back to this second thing you said about knowing how to be submissive, but you're afraid that if you pull back, it'll crumble. Sometimes you have to let it crumble because sometimes they have to see what they didn't do.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? And you got to be okay with that lesson.
Yes.
Because we try to teach things, but we don't want to go through the hardship of learning either.
Yes.
Sometimes you have to pull back. You know what? I'll show you better than I can tell you. I'm gonna let it fall.
Yes.
I'm gonna let it fall because until you see it for yourself, we cannot go on. We can't move forward.
That's right.
So sometimes we have to also go through the pruning process. We also have to go through that fire to be refined.
Yes.
That fire
And
doesn't
that's
feel
painful.
good. We talk about iron sharpening iron. I mentioned it. I'm a country boy.
Yes,
We used to get knives and file them with the files, right? And if you listen to that sound, that's a loud screeching sound. And if you touch the blade on either one of those metals, it's hot. That is uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, that tool is super sharp when you're done grinding it up against that other metal. We don't like the grinding, but we want to be sharp.
Yes.
None of us want to go through the process of being ground into what we need to be. And the only reason we need to be ground is because we're dull.
And that's why you got to trust and have faith, because it is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. LaQuisha, you said something so powerful here, and I don't even realize if you heard what you said or went back and read it. You said, I want to be submissive and be his helper, but if I step back, I have a fear for everything to crumble before my eyes. God has not given us a spirit of fear.
Amen.
But a spirit of sound mind, love, power, and a sound mind. And so if you're operating in fear, he will never become the head of the household that you need him to be. That is another thing as women, especially, type A women, women who are about their business and getting things done. We know we want him to level up and do what he needs to do, but we have to be willing to give some of that up. I'm telling you, there have been so many things, and I don't even know if he realizes it, but in our relationship, that when we were talking about it or making decisions about it, I literally had to say to myself, let it go. Let him do this. Even though you see it, you've already articulated, you've already said what your thoughts were, let this one go. This battle is not worth fighting right now. And allow him to see. It's going to do several things. One, it's going to make him feel as if you actually have faith in him and his leadership.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And two, it's going to show you that he actually could be a leader. And you can actually start to relinquish and trust and believe. But the whole superwoman thing and us having to always pull it all together, all we're doing is wearing ourselves out and killing ourselves.
That's it. And LaTroy said something that's powerful. He says, when he starts, reward him. We cannot be afraid of that, guys. We think because we're older now, we're not children anymore, that, giving people compliments and patting their back is immature. No, that's wise, actually, because we're just big kids. And all of us want words of affirmation. Especially if it's something you've been complaining about that I'm not
ladies,
doing.
Especially men. They may not want to admit it or not, but men, baby, let me say this.
I'm not denying nothing.
Let me say this. But a lot of men do. You're a little different. You know how you have that spectrum? You're on that side of it. But a lot of men, they're like our children, really. They want, because I had an issue with, it was like, why am I keep stroking you and patting your back? I'm doing all this stuff and don't nobody come to me and say, oh, well, great job for cleaning up, great job for vacuuming, great job. But men are just built differently. And I'm not saying you have to pacify. It's not a pacifying thing. But it's just a matter of showing appreciation for the fact that we all have choices. We have choices to take care of our families, to not take care of our families, to take care of our spouse or not. And so that's why when I cook and my husband tells me thank you, it's not because he thinks that that's my job. It's because he appreciated that I cooked. And I appreciate that he's saying that. And so, same thing with him.
Even if I felt that that was your job, it does not mean that you still shouldn't be appreciated for doing it.
Even if you felt that way, because we both could.
Right. But there are some. Listen, I'm not opposed to having certain responsibilities that's just a man supposed to do them. Sometimes we get offended with that. No, that's your job. You're supposed to do that. You shouldn't get offended. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying you. I'm just saying there are some things within the context of relationships that are our responsibility as individuals. But we don't like people saying that, oh, so you're going to tell me.
No, I think once it's been established, I do think once the couple has established.
But I think people are getting away from wanting to take ownership of something. You know what I'm saying? They want to be able to put it down, pick it up when you choose to. And that's a person. People that are in relationships like that, they always struggling because you never can depend on them for anything.
Right.
That's the day they want to do it, tomorrow they
and
don't.
I think many times in many relationships it can happen organically,
Right.
authentically, and sometimes people actually talk about it. But I guess my whole point was, just because he's doing something, like let's say I've been wanting him to clean up or been wanting him to do something, and he finally does it, I can't take the attitude of, well, that's what you should be doing, so I ain't got nothing to say. It's like, you know what, I really appreciate you doing that, because what that means is you heard me. Like,
and 9 times out of 10, he's going to be motivated to do it again.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying?
That's right.
When it don't come, listen, babe, I really appreciate you doing it. Thank you so much. Stop talking after that. Shh. That's all we needed. You saw us, you heard us.
Suppose she's just pouring it on the
We don't need to hear that. We don't need to hear no more. Just say, baby.
Suppose she's like, baby, I'm going to give you something tonight just for that. You're going to want to hear that.
You can add that part.
Yeah,
But I'm just saying.
See?
I'm
The
just
truth
saying.
comes out. And
no,
the
what
truth
I'm saying
sets
is,
you free.
sometimes we over talk it. You know how the old folks say, you gave a good bucket of milk, then you kicked it over.
Oh, never heard that one.
Yeah.
But check this out. Okay. Dion said 2 things,
Okay.
and she just said one other thing, but I do want to comment on something she said. She said, I didn't understand the phrase marriages work prior to marriage, but I definitely understand now. I like to say now that marriage is not for the weak.
That's true.
This is true. And maybe sometimes people don't want to hear work, but the reason why I always say work is that I don't want people going into it haphazardly just thinking like I get to just go in and I'm having sex and and not change, like everything's just gonna be great because I love him and he loves me and that's good. Like, you have to be intentional. So maybe that's another way of also putting it. In a marriage you have to be intentional about watering those plants, about that marriage thriving and not just surviving. But she said, check this out. As a type A woman who has taken care of herself for so long, amen, without the help of man, I went from self-teaching how to get things done. Whereas now that I'm married, it's not that easy to just allow him to take over the reins. I'm so used to doing it all myself, it's hard to just give it over. Okay, let me just say this, Dion, and this is what I had to learn, and he and I still talk about this. We're going on 8 years of marriage in June, June 24th, right? Boom. And what I am learning is, and sometimes I have to physically tell him this is my strength, or this is your strength. Or he might tell me, I know this is what I do. You gotta find what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And don't get me wrong, Dion, I'm not saying you're not good at what you do. I watched you. When we went for your wedding, honey, you had that thing like a well-oiled machine. And it was great.
That's because she's my baby.
That's because she's your baby. She's my baby too. That's besides the point. We digress. But here's the thing that I learned, and I learned it in my first marriage after, there was already some struggles taking place when I went to counseling. And it was that women, all you super women with the coats, with the capes, I'm sorry. And I'm not trying to go against the S on my chest, thing with, what's her name? The celebrity who sings that song. Alicia Keys. I'm not saying that we're not super women in our own rights as it relates to, handling our business. I'm not taking that away from us. But the notion that we got to set ourselves on fire to keep other people warm, that's unhealthy. And the thing is, if you continue to move about, like, thank you, Holy Ghost. Think about it, Dion. If you continue to move in such a way that the way you've always been, that means you're really behaving in a way like you're still single. Okay? And if you're still single and you can do everything so well and so efficiently, and as men, he's thinking, what does she need me for? So the question is not whether or not, and as women, I've accepted this and we've got to accept it. It takes nothing away from you to allow him to do some things. It doesn't mean you can't do it.
Right.
You're just allowing him to do it.
Right.
And it really hit me when we were dating and my girls were like, you don't have to open the door for me. And I'm like, whoa. Like, you've taken this too far. And then I had to sit down and talk with them. And they were like, well, Mom, you always taught us to be independent and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, wait. And I've never even told them, don't let a man open the door for you. it was just one of those
It
things
graduated to that.
It just
Right.
the assumption is you can handle your business, and I have no regrets of teaching them how to handle their business. But the caveat is, just because someone chooses to do something for you doesn't mean you're saying you can't do it yourself. But if that person is showing you kindness, or showing that they want to be a team player, or showing that they want to contribute, let them. Are they going to do it just like you did it?
Nope.
No, because they're not you.
Right. Right.
But that relationship is always going to be one-sided when it comes to stuff like that. And guess what? I'm 49 years old. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to get tired. I'm tired right now from all those years and time of feeling like I had to be superwoman and get it together. So now I am more than happy to pass over several things to my husband here, because he's more than capable. He got strong shoulders and some muscles.
Guys, look, we've been on here. An hour has flown by fast, right?
Baby, it's been an hour and 10 minutes.
But before we close, we
We
do
do.
want to give you all some tools for success to ensure that you are not living in a house divided. And
Right.
if you are, what can you do to kind of now become that unit that we want to become?
And before we give those tools, I do want to say that with that house divided and being on the same page, we talked about sharing the same value system. We talked about when you share the same value system, it's going to be easier to make decisions because you have that same point of reference, that's your measuring stick. But also it's going to create more peace in your home.
Yes.
I mean, think about it. What is that scripture in Proverbs about? Better for a man to be
on a roof
than to be in a house
with a
with
cantankerous woman.
with a cantankerous woman.
Yeah.
And I think the same can go for a man. Like, nobody wants to be in a household where there's constant chaos and dissension.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the question is, somebody once asked, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Yeah.
Because, and to me, that applies to times where it's your preference.
I adore peace, and like Paul said, he says, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that ye walk worthy of the vocation wherewith ye are called, with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, even as ye are called into one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism. The thing that I love about this passage is that when we are operating in love, we're always trying to generate an atmosphere of peace. When you start thinking more, let's have a relationship that is thriving and that is peace. When I think of home at the end of the day, I am not concerned. I'm actually happy to go home.
That's good to know.
I know people who are like, man, I don't, you know, and I know women who genuinely have talked to me and they don't like coming home after work. And I never want to be in an atmosphere like that. Rachel and I may not always agree. There have been times when she has grinded my nerves to the very core. But I can honestly say I have never felt like I don't want to go home.
Well, that's good to know.
You know, and so that creating that atmosphere of peace is very, very vital in having a relationship that's thriving. And we have to be the agents of peace.
Right.
I can't expect Rachel to be the agent of peace if I'm not already implementing certain activities or certain behaviors that says it will promote peace.
An agent of peace.
Right.
And literally sometimes, like for him and I, sometimes literally there are certain things, pet peeves that I might have. Day by day, I have to like remind myself, or really have a conversation like, is this something worth even mentioning? Is this something worth saying? Is it going to contribute to the peace or take away from the peace?
Right.
And go back to that 80-20 thing. You know, you may not always be on the same page at the same time. However, you do want to have the same core values, because that's what you go back to. So as far as tools for success, here's the first thing you need to do. For those of you, whether you are married, not married, you're in a relationship, Christian, non-Christian, I would say you both need to separately Well, have a conversation about separately writing down what you believe your core values are. Like, this is what's most important to me.
As it relates to a relationship.
As it relates to a relationship. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of you might be saying, well, yeah, that should have been done. Yeah, but we're saying, whether it was done or not, revisit or do it for the first time. Separately write your list so that there's no influence. Like, oh, what you got? Oh, I didn't think about that one. Write them separately. Then come back together and share your list. Put check marks next to those things that you guys pretty much said we're the same. All right? The comparisons. And then go back and contrast. What are the things that are not the same? Let's circle those. Let's see what that really means. What do you mean by that? What do we need to look at? What do we need to do so that we are on the same page? You guys may need to have a focus for that week. You know what? We need to start focusing on this because there's so many disparities in our list. We've got to find our oneness again. And so once you do that, you want to have devotions that fortify your relationship. So what that means is sometimes people come together, they have devotion, and it's whatever they opened in the devotional book that day. No, have intentional, like, we need to have a devotion on understanding.
Right.
Or respect.
If that's your problem. Especially if that's your problem.
If that's your problem.
Right.
Respect or trust or having faith as a couple. Whatever the case may be, make sure your devotions are focused on that. And then at the end of the day, you want to make sure that those two lists become one.
One. Right.
See how that works? The two become one. Where you at least have a list that you're both going to agree to abide by. Now, some of you may be in a situation where there's so much contention that you don't even know where to start. You might need to get a mediator to kind of at least help you through that process initially, because usually by the time where it's gotten contentious, you don't even trust each other.
Right.
And when I say trust, we always think about trust like, somebody cheating or what have you. No. You don't trust each other that the other person's going to do what they said they're going to do. Right. You don't trust that whatever you're talking about is going to come to fruition. So you really might want to consider bringing in a third party that you trust that will share those same values.
And not only that, a person that can help you all navigate that process. Sometimes we just can't do it because we're in such a heightened state of emotion. And I don't want you all to be fearful or have some negative stigma toward reaching out for help.
Right.
I often, Rachel and I did a presentation about drowning relationships, right? If you're drowning and you're drowning and you see a boat, are you not going to try to get the people's attention in the boat? Or are you just going to just sit there and sink? The reality is we're going to do whatever we need to do to help ourselves get saved. We're going to scream out, but sometimes we don't do that in our marriages. In our marriages, we will suffer in silence, and then before you know it, the marriage is dissolved.
Right.
And that is so unfair. We need to really fight for our marriages. And I said that to say this, guys. You can see our contact. You can see our contact information on the line.
I hope they're hearing all this because it looks like it's buffered. But let me say something. There's somebody on here that said, I need a one-on-one. Antonio Crew, I need some one-on-one. Okay. Let's tell them about.
Well, that's what I was explaining.
Okay, go ahead, sweetie.
If you look on our banner there, you can reach out to the email address and contact at rrcgroup.org. If you just want some one-on-one talk or you want a couple session, just reach out and say, hey, Jimmy, man, I would really love to sit down and talk with you so we can navigate through this process that we're in. I need some help understanding a few things. That's what we're here for. That's the ministry that God has given us, has given me for over 15 years, and I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoy it, doing what I do. This work has probably been the most fulfilling work that I've done. Yeah. So, guys, we truly, truly appreciate you all for tuning in today. It has been our joy talking to you all about, a house divided. Are we on the same page? And again, we just want to recap. Before we close, you have to have the same core values. You and your significant other must share the same core values. Secondly, you must be, once you start sharing those same core values, decision making become a little bit easier. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. when you're making those, when
and
you're
make
coming to those,
decisions that's best for the relationship and not for
just
yourself.
for you. Right. Don't make selfish decisions. Make decisions that's in the best interest of the relationship. And last but not least, you want to create an atmosphere of peace. Your home should be a place where you long to be, even while you're at work.
That's right.
You want to be with your significant other because you all enjoy each other's company that much.
Wow.
And I do believe once you do that, at the end of it all, you all will be able to say, man, this was worth the ride.
Right. And you've built a foundation for yourself from which your relationship can grow. Dion, we love you, girl. She said this was wonderful. Reginald Miles said, thank you so much. I didn't hear the whole message, but I'll be rewatching. Great. And share it with your people. But my husband hit the nail on the head. Like, honestly, we're doing this not because it looks good and this is the thing to do that people are doing. We're literally doing this because God has given us this message for couples, for people, for relationships, and we're being obedient to that. There are so many people out here hurting, so many people needlessly suffering, and the enemy just sits back and he just watches the demise like, yes, and yet another one. And I'm here to tell you, he's a liar. And as sure as I'm telling you that, he's going to try to attack us, but we're going to make sure we come girded.
That's right.
Strong.
Putting on that full armor.
Put on the full armor. You got to cover it all up.
Again, thank you all for tuning in. Look, we'll be in the same place, same time next week. Next Sunday, 6 o'clock Eastern Standard, right?
Yes,
Yes,
Eastern Standard, 6 p.m. Assuming we have no technical difficulties.
Right,
we're going to go ahead and pray over that.
We'll be here live, and then we do want you all to come back and join in with us so we can continue to Kiana Taylor.
I love this.
Duffy.
I'm new here. I will most definitely tune in all the time. I'll be contacting you all.
Thank you so much. God bless you all, and till next week, peace.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.